So we're here today to talk about news on Facebook.
It's complicated.
It is a very complicated topic. John, you are the brains behind something that the Wall Street Journal has been showing off for the last couple of days. Blue feed, red feed. Can you tell us briefly what this is?
Sure. By looking at this, you'll see it's a very simple presentation here. We have two columns here. One is labeled liberal, one is labeled conservative, and you're seeing recent news that has been pulled from the public Facebook pages of a very carefully put together list of sources that align liberal and conservative.
Maybe we should start just by kind of explaining to people some of the different ways that people get news and where the controversy is, and then also where blue feed, red feed fits into it.
You know, that Facebook feed that you see on your Facebook experience every day when you get there, there's a lot of, the news feed. There's a lot of questions about how that's put together, and a lot of the criticism is about transparency. And many people have tried to figure out exactly how that algorithm works, and it's not exactly clear.
The news feed is when you pull up Facebook on the web, it's your main experience. It's all that stuff. It's your friends.
It's your status. You'll see status updates from your friends. It might be a news story from the Wall Street Journal. It could be news of a band you're following or a new movie that's coming.
Right. But as of late, it has turned more into a source of news for folks. Right?
A huge amount of people get their news from Facebook. Up to 60% of people using Facebook in the U.S. say that that's one of their main sources for political news.
For years, actually, there's been a concern out there that these sorts of personalized internet experiences are creating a world where I don't see the same thing as you do, and because of that, perhaps we are entering into echo chambers, or they like to call this the filter bubble, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's a strange phenomenon where if you're looking at your feed every day and you have the same set of sources which you're getting news and opinion from, if you just see those every day again and again, the thinking is that maybe you're assuming that everybody else sees this.
Right.
And then when you do encounter stuff that challenges that view, it can be pretty jarring.
Right. Now, Facebook is not the only source of personalized information on the internet. It's actually a much bigger, broader question. Your Google search results are customized. Your Netflix recommendations, what you see on Amazon as well. But Facebook has gotten a lot of the criticism on this concern. And so, in fact, last year, they published a study trying to address whether this is a problem, whether they are responsible through their systems, through their program, for closing off our points of view.
Right. So they wanted to test this idea, kind of challenge some of that criticism. They wanted to find out, is their algorithm, which is their proprietary code that is deciding what shows up in your feed and the order and which sources, they wanted to test whether the algorithm was actually showing people stuff that was counter-attitudinal, okay, something that might challenge your worldview. And they wanted to see, was it the algorithm, their code, or was it your people's actual behaviors? So they did this big study, and their conclusion was it was actually people's behavior. They kind of found that people were seeing news and content that was not necessarily aligned with their political leaning.
So Facebook did this study mostly to and reach the conclusion that they don't create a filter bubble, they don't create an echo chamber. That's on us, based on who our friends are. That's what
guilty as charged.
That's what informs the news feed.
Yep.
You looked at this study and you saw another interesting potential use for it, which is to take the information, the data that they provided about where all those news sources align, to do something different.
The idea for this is it's a lens or a pair of lenses. You can imagine the red and blue 3D glasses. To look at the topics of the news that are happening in this very contentious election season, right? So every hour we're going out to these sources and we're grabbing their latest updates, their status updates that they've been posting. Some of them are photos, some are videos, and other ones are links to other news stories. And we're including their commentary here at the top and the content that they're sharing, and you can see how many likes and shares they have. We also, if you scroll down a bit, if you click on this button up here where it says conservative or liberal, you'll see a list of sources. And I think this is an important thing because you might see, and this scrolls down here too, you get a sense of the audience that some of these sites have. And I encourage people to look at this stuff because depending upon which side of this you find most aligned to your worldview, you may not be familiar with some of these
Sure.
other outlets.
Sure. And again, to remind people, the Wall Street Journal is not deciding what is a liberal source
at
of
all.
news and a conservative source of news. This is, in fact, an aggregate of American Facebook users that decided this.
These are real stories that are really being shared by millions of people and who have politically identified themselves as very liberal
Right.
or very conservative.
So let's talk about the impact of this. What do you see when you look at this?
It's really surprising. I mean, if you take, there's a couple of, obvious ones, topics here that I think people would look at. We included guns and abortion. And certainly everybody's opinions about Barack Obama are clear. But Donald Trump is a little more interesting, right? So he's not necessarily embraced by all of the conservatives. So you see a very interesting kind of message that happens here. The other thing is, as this news cycle unfolds, we're going to be changing that list of topics at the top. And while we were working on this, we found some interesting topics that rose up. When Harriet Tubman was announced to be gracing the $20 bill, that created a very strong reaction on both sides that had an enormous amount of contrast.
So I went through this experience of trying to balance out my feed a little more by following lots of additional media sources. And it's actually not a very good way to add things to your news feed because, again, it's an algorithm that's really designed to show you things that it thinks you're going to like based on your behavior, your friends' behavior, other people's behavior. So you can't necessarily customize a news feed on Facebook like you could maybe put together a series of things on a newsstand. I think what we're learning from this is that Facebook now, at least from my perspective, has to acknowledge that they are a media organization. They are, just like everybody else, like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or whoever, responsible for bringing information to the world. And there's certain requirements that come with that. When you read one publication, you might know that it brings a particular point of view, and they're acknowledging that and they're talking about that. But up until the last week or so, Facebook really hasn't acknowledged that they have anything to do with shaping what kind of news we see.
There literally is no one else who has this kind of data. I mean, Facebook knows everything about you, and it knows everything about the network that you have.
Right.
So they are in a position to be able to build this in a way that no one else is.
Right. And without even having to make their own choices about what is liberal or conservative media, because again, they have the data that does that. Before we go, what's going to happen with Blue Feed, Red Feed? Is it going away tomorrow? Or?
We're definitely going to keep it up and running over the course of the election. And we are going to be adjusting these topics as news kind of bubbles up. We'll be looking, you come back to this and look at it, and you'll be able to see different topics that will be changing over time. And I think we're going to archive the other ones so you can kind of look back at the election, because during the course of an election, people have a very short memory. And things that were all that what everybody was talking about during the news cycle might be long forgotten.
Got it. So Blue Feed, Red Feed lives on through this election, at least until Facebook gives us something better, which we hope they do.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeff.